Welcome everyone to the February 2026 EVCO monthly meeting. Today we'll have a number of subjects, and if the clicker works, there we go. BluWave-ai is here and they will talk to us about EV everywhere and related subject matters. And then Stephen will do a report on his trip in Japan. So he went to Japan and as usual, observed all the EVs and charging stations and all that. And he'll report on that. And then Mike will be doing the news. And then we'll be talking about the future, past and future events, okay? So, BluWave-ai.
Thanks for having us back again. I know we've been out a few times now. It's always a pleasure to be able to kind of speak to the hometown club. I guess since we were here last, I've actually properly joined the club with an EV6. So I'm able to, get a little further into the tech and, better test drive some of the stuff we're building as well, which has been really awesome. So yeah, I guess today we've got a new round of some of the data analysis and aggregation we do for how EVs are charging in our community, right? We've got a program that puts us in contact with a number of different electric vehicles around Ottawa and now across Canada. We're able to pull some data from that and develop some insights on, how EVs interact with the grid, how they use their energy, how they can be used to help the grid as a distributed energy resource. So we'll take you through some of that and take any questions you guys have about it. So do you want to kick off the first couple of slides, Alex?
So for those who haven't met myself and Chris yet, let me just give some background about the project, and then Chris will share some of the learnings from our latest stage of testing. So in 2021, we talked to Hydro Ottawa, and we asked them, with all these EVs that are coming online, how many EVs can you handle, do you think, before you're going to start having issues in the grid? And, we pointed at some neighborhoods. You can look at Westboro, for example, right? It's a bit more affluent. And so we kind of expected neighborhoods like that to adopt EVs quicker. But of course, the infrastructure there is also a bit older, right? Probably built out in the 60s. So we figured, there might be some hotspots there. So we partnered with the University of Waterloo. There was a couple of professors there and some grad students that helped us run some simulations that we did in the grid. And then we, from those results, we kind of figured out that, approximately 1 in 4 houses, if they have a level 2 charger, it could be enough to overwhelm the grid. So we're talking like, not so much transformers exploding or anything, but transformers being overheated, the oil and the insulation in those transformers, just reducing the service life of those assets. So we took that to the ISO, which is the Independent Electricity System Operator for Ontario. So they manage supply and demand in the grid. And then we said, hey, look, there's a potential problem here with EVs and putting strain on the grid. So they gave us some funding to look at, okay, how can we address this without, having to dig up all the lines and replace all the transformers and stuff? What's a software-based, non-wires alternative solution to that? So there's a couple of milestones here, right? So, we originally going to look at different EV chargers and talking to them. But we realized that there's, hundreds of different EV chargers out there. So, it's a disaster to integrate with, right? Not all of them are connected to the internet. Yeah, so there's hundreds of different L2 chargers out there. Usually people just get whatever's cheap, right? So we wanted to avoid that integration headache. So, while we did try to integrate with a handful of chargers, we bought a bunch, we installed them outside our offices. We could talk to them via OCPP. We thought a better way would be to talk to the vehicles directly. So that's kind of where we first engaged with EVCO. This is probably December 2023, I think it was. And, we had about 20 people back then. We just had Tesla. That's how we started out. And then we slowly started, we had version 1 of our app. We have version 2 now. We've been integrating with different makes and models. We learned a lot about the challenge of integrating with electric vehicle manufacturers, different EVs. I'll give you an example, BMW i3, for example, right? We could initially integrate with them, but then they sunsetted the 3G network. And so we can't talk to them anymore, right? They're basically stranded assets. Hyundai, Kia, for example, they have different implementations in Canada versus the US. So we learned a lot about that. A lot of our findings we've kind of communicated to, NRCan, regulatory bodies, stuff like that. So they're really interested in our experience, our integration hell. And so we have a dialogue going with them. We have a dialogue going with the OEB, the ISO, with different utility companies to just share about what we learned. And we'll share some of that today. So the initial test, we came up to you guys in December 2023. We formally started testing with a larger group. I think we did our first outreach with a larger group of Hydro Ottawa customers in summer 2024, I would say. And then some of the more formalized testing we did in 2025. So the ISO, they have a lot of different types of tests, and then they have different testing periods as well. So we're testing with these assets as if they were a generation asset in the grid. So the same procedures and protocols that you would encounter if you were operating a battery connected to the grid or a generation asset. So that's kind of in the background. You guys would have gotten notifications on your app, but in the background, we were testing different durations, different power levels, and stuff like that. I guess just to summarize here, we have a bunch of different brands here, right? And then we also were looking at different methods to incentivize users. So, it's nice to say, I want to contribute to the grid, I want to reduce carbon emissions with my activities, but we want to make it worth your while too, right? The stuff we're doing is ultimately saving the utility companies money in terms of infrastructure that they don't have to upgrade, right? So, it's only fair if you guys get some of the share here. So we signed up some reward vendors, right? So the more you use our app, you can exchange points for, Uber, gift cards, Tim Hortons, IKEA, and so forth. I'll let Chris talk about this a bit more later, but you can see here, everyone kind of has their vehicles plugged in and the timer set to around 11 p.m., right? That's just when the ULO rate starts in Ontario. But everyone does it for the first couple hours here. So by spreading out the charging, we can get a 20 to 30% reduction in peak demand. So that's good news for the utility. And, if we have a lot of assets kind of concentrated, in city centers and stuff, that's really good as well. So, yeah, the app, we're several iterations in. We took a lot of feedback from you guys. I think everyone in this room is pretty well versed in kind of what's going on behind the scenes with the effect that your EV has on the grid. So for you guys, it was pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of the utility customers that we brought on, they needed some more explanation. So we built that into the app. We made the app a bit easier to use. And on the back end as well, we've been working on how to make things easier to basically give the utilities better situational awareness of what's going on, right? Because they know roughly who has vehicles just based on registration data in terms of who applied for a level 2 charger, if you sign up for their mailing list. So they kind of know that, but they don't have real-time insights into what's going on, right? A lot of the smart meters at the utility, for example, they're not real-time. They might update once every day or once every week. So the utility never really has like an up-to-date, what's going on at this minute. So we've been working on a lot behind the scenes as well. So driver benefits I talked a bit about, right? So the idea here is that we can augment the driver app that you have. We're giving you rewards. We're sharing, the benefits that the utility gets. We're sharing with you guys. Ideally, we're helping to reduce carbon emissions, and we're also helping to automate, maybe supplement what the OEM app can't do right now. Okay, and then I'll pass on to Chris.
Yeah, so to kind of frame this up, we've been doing a lot of analysis in the last few months on the project that we ran with Hydro Ottawa and with the IESO here in Ontario, aggregating results of 2 years of EV charging data and demand response events here in Ottawa with EVs. And we wanted to kind of compare this against some of the battery energy storage that's being placed on the grid and see how EVs stack up as a distributed energy resource for the grid versus the big installations that are going in, kind of like the one west of the city, where you have these arrays of lithium-ion batteries being attached to the grid to soak up renewable energy when it's abundant and inject it back into the grid when demand's high. So I think it's kind of interesting actually to look at you have to point this at the laptop to get it to go? We got to get close. Hey, there we go. All right, so there are kind of two different ways in which your car can be helpful to the grid, two different specific ways in which your vehicle can be helpful to the grid using current technology. The first one of those, maybe the most obvious one, is energy storage. Cars have big batteries in them. They spend most of the time sitting still. They have the ability generally to soak up energy right now, but not to dispatch it back to the grid. So it's kind of one-way battery storage. We hear a lot of talk about V2G. It's generally speaking not a big reality yet in terms of hardware you can actually buy. Stats otherwise should be pretty familiar. We've got a little bit above 60 kilowatt hours per vehicle average in Canada. Like I mentioned, it's one way it can pull energy from the grid, but it can be configured to do so at strategic times. And there's actually a lot you can do with that capability without even being able to inject the energy back into the grid. And then this other piece here, they're idle up to 95% of the time, which is really important. It means you have flexibility to a large degree as to when you put energy into that asset, into that rolling battery. And finally, from the grid perspective, the super important thing is that they're paid for by people who need cars instead of by utilities installing fields full of batteries. So if these things can be harnessed as assets for the grid, they become a very cost-effective way of placing battery storage on the grid. I'm going to get used to this. All right, so as of the end of last year, we have approximately 1 million EVs on the road in Canada. And looking at the federal government records for battery storage systems, we have 43 that are live in Canada. Live or under construction, I think, if you look at their table. In terms of battery capacity, it's a huge discrepancy. We have 60 gigawatt hours of rolling energy in EV batteries in the country. We have 800 megawatt hours, so orders of magnitude less battery capacity on the grid today than we have rolling around our streets in EVs. And looking ahead, oh man, I have too many transitions in this slide deck for this. Looking ahead to 2030, we're projecting, I mean, things are a little uncertain this year compared to previous years, but in the area of 5 million, give or take, should be on the roads in another 5 years. And we'll be up to about double the number of battery energy storage installations in Canada at that point, if everything gets built as planned. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. So that's 4 years from now, and you're anticipating only a doubling, only 40 more BESS installations, so that's like 10 a year. You don't. They're a little bit bigger. Okay.
These are large scale.
These are larger scale
really,
ones?
really big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, like fields
right.
full of batteries, and that's.
Okay. The question honestly, was like, you don't think it's going to be more than that, but I guess if they're bigger, then yeah, I guess it makes sense.
So I looked at projects that have been approved for funding and/or are already under construction, and things at the government and utility scale tend not to arrive ahead of schedule as a general rule. So yeah, I was kind of surprised the number's that low, but this is what we have, in the pipeline right now for battery installations in Canada. I'm sure there's more that's further out, but it takes a long time to get these things approved. I mean, you've seen some of the zoning conversations around the one we have going in our backyard here. These are lengthy processes, right? So this is the, either of these numbers could be off by a significant amount, but I think we're seeing still a very, very large discrepancy in either case, right? EVs are waning on battery capacity versus solid, large-scale battery installations on the grid. So that's the energy storage component of EVs as distributed energy resources. But there's also a distinction here in terms of the power coming out of your wall to fill up the EV. And this is the one that's kind of interesting from the grid perspective. I mentioned V2G being a hot topic, but one that's yet to kind of materialize in any real way in terms of hardware on the streets. That's not actually a deal breaker from the grid perspective. And this is a little bit counterintuitive, but an EV charger, even if it can only pull energy off the grid, can still act as something called a dispatchable load, which is basically the term for a power-consuming device that you can start and stop remotely on demand. So if you have something that pulls energy from the grid that can be scheduled and timed and coordinated with other things, that's referred to as a dispatchable load. Here we're looking at 7 to 9 kilowatts per charger being pretty typical. Basic level 2 numbers. And importantly, if you drive average mileage, you only need an average of a couple of hours of charging at those rates per day to put enough energy in your vehicle. I think most people find they're in the habit of charging every other night, every third night, pretty typical. You're usually going up and down by like 40%, right? Top out at 80, bottom out at sort of 30 or 40 before you say, okay, it's time to plug in again. So it's not that much energy going in. And when you consider how much time cars spend in their driveways, there's huge flexibility to harness this dispatchable load and pull that power from the grid at times that are better for it. So again, looking at the installed and projected battery storage capacity for the Canadian grid, we're going to see a familiar picture once I get this to go. There we go. 2025, 26 numbers. Again, we see a large amount for EV capacity and a relatively small amount for installed battery capacity. Oh, I went too far that time. I get into the habit of mashing it and it takes me too far. And then looking out to 2030 again, those same battery installations, we see a similar picture with dispatchable load to what we have with battery storage in terms of EVs. So way more capacity for power on the roads in the form of EVs than we have in battery installations.
Sorry, I know you probably don't have the stats for this, but
Yep.
I know that there's a growing but small residential battery capacity coming online. Is that measurable at all in your stats?
I don't have the numbers handy for that off the top of my head, but my sense is that that's very small relative to EV proliferation right now. So you would see at least an order of magnitude smaller bar there, because I think your typical home battery installation is similar capacity to an EV battery pack, give or take. Smaller than, okay, so shrink the bar further, thank you. Yeah, so there's the caveat here that of course those grid attached batteries can inject power into the grid, so it's not a direct substitute, but in terms of the dispatchable load that we can bring to bear with EVs, it's a pretty powerful resource if we can harness it. And I guess one of the really important concepts here that's not super intuitive is when it comes to dispatchable load, turning things off is kind of the same as firing up generation from the grid perspective in the big picture. So if you have too much demand on the grid, you can fire up a gas plant and get it to quickly add more power, or you can turn things off and have basically the same effect in terms of supply and demand on the grid. So that's why this concept is important, even though we're not injecting power back in. I'm going to start using the buttons now. Hope we don't get feedback. All right, so to put this in context, how much power is this? If we look at the, oh, it's not great either, right? Can you go back one, Alex? Thanks, man. All right, here we go. So EV charging power 2026, projected for 2030. And then here's the power that Ontario used on the busiest day in recent memory. So I think that was June 24th, 2025. Everyone's ACs were on. It was a big heat wave. And we pulled almost 25 gigawatts from the grid at peak hours in the evening there. So in terms of EV power in Canada, we're looking at from today slightly less to in 2030 slightly more power than an Ontario uses on a really bad day. So it's a super significant amount. That's not to say that all those EVs will charge at the same time, but if we're not careful about how we manage them as adoption increases, if you have half of them or a third of them charging at the same time, that's potentially as much as half of an Ontario hitting the grid that might not be necessary if we can time things and coordinate them so they're not overlapping.
Can I just, sorry, your timing there, was that the amount that they are doing per day or per year or per, I wasn't quite sure with your, like that 7,000, what's the
yeah, so
scale
that's a power unit rather than an energy unit. So that's instantaneous power drawn from the wall and not aggregated power over a day or a year.
Okay, so that's if every EV in Canada plugged in all at once and was charging all at once, we'd be able to draw. We want 7,000 to charge every EV available.
Exactly. Yeah, roughly 1 million EVs charging at 7 kilowatts gets you 7 gigawatts. Yep. All good? Okay, so what we're considering, what we're trying to influence with BluWave-ai and with EV Everywhere is we're trying to come up with better ways of strategically controlling this charging, right? And that involves interfacing with a lot of drivers all over the country. It involves coming up with sort of a better algorithm, and that's where our machine learning processes come into play here. But in terms of the hierarchy of how charging can be organized, we've kind of got a few different levels. Business as usual, everyone plugs in when they think they need to charge. It's kind of messy. It's based on, human habits, human memory. The next one after that would be sort of soft control from utilities. We see this pretty commonly today in the form of time of use price signals. So it's sort of a gentle course control of when people pull energy on the residential grid based on how much it costs. But it still relies on ratepayers paying attention and being able to shift their charging and deciding, that it's worthwhile for me to do this thing at a different time if it's cheaper for me then. The next step up from there is demand response. And this is what we've been trialing over the last couple of years with our EV Everywhere program with Hydro Ottawa. So if you're running our app and you see grid smart events and your EV charging gets curtailed, you're participating in one of these. So this is the conventional model for taking power off the grid when it's too busy. It works better than time of use signals because it's an active control mechanism, but it's still happening in reaction to the grid being overloaded in the first place. And we believe where we need to go is towards a more active, continuous control model where we coordinate the EV charging such that you don't have big peaks forming in the first place. And that's what we're driving towards. So I won't spend too much time here, but I'm sure you can all imagine the limitations with, having manual control of charging, fully manual control with everyone on the residential grid just doing their own thing. It's unpredictable, and you can have unlucky conditions where too many people are plugged in at once when they really don't need to be, just based on, folks not being on top of it, or, different events in the calendar that affect a lot of people's routines all at once. We actually have an example of this happening later that I'll show you too. So yeah, we don't need to spend too much time on this. Time of use rates are a little bit better from the grid perspective because they can shift and shape people's behavior. So you now have kind of a very, very simple boiled down formula that lets drivers know when's a better time to pull energy from the grid. It doesn't actually match grid conditions one-to-one. This is a very, very sort of smoothed over version of things, but it does still effectively work, especially in markets like Ontario where we have ultra low overnight and it's 10 times cheaper to charge during the cheap rate. It does effectively work to shift behavior, but it's still not, a perfect solution for this. And I think the big question comes down to whether people decide it's worth it, right? You have sort of a spectrum. I mean, we have a room full of early adopters here, so everyone in this room tends to be very dialed into their vehicle and its energy use and how much it's costing and all that stuff, right? But you do have folks who are maybe less interested in that or less cognizant or just less interested in optimizing their electricity bills, right? So for them, this stuff doesn't work quite as well. They may not think it's worth it. They may not be bothered. They might be taking months to get around to it, and in the meantime, when they plug in their vehicle, it charges right away during peak hours in the evening, typically. So actually, was there a graph before this? This one's kind of interesting. This pulls mostly from data here in Ottawa, and we can actually see 2 timer peaks happen. So if we look at the percentage of plugged-in vehicles that are actively charging, we see these bumps at 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., which indicates that without a user walking up to plug something new in, more vehicles have started charging at those times. So this is a measurable effect over hundreds of vehicles right here in our home city, showing that this time of use peak is a real phenomenon. It's not just something that's theorized. So 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. when the rates roll over, timers go off and cars automatically start charging if left to their own devices here. So, I mean, this is good news for drivers, right? You can get cheaper electricity for your vehicle. You can do it automatically so that you don't have to worry about going back outside in the cold at 10:55 to plug your vehicle in, right? But from the grid perspective, as adoption gets higher, this can lead to new peaks in new places, which is what they were trying to avoid in the first place with time of use rates. The other element I mentioned is that time of use windows being very simple and only changing once a year, they don't always match the conditions of what's going on in the grid. So lots going on here, but basically the yellow bars are GHG content as a function of time of day. So starting from midnight and ending at midnight for the Ontario grid from month of July, I think last summer. They're lowest at 4 a.m. and 3 a.m., but the rates get low, as we mentioned earlier, at 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. respectively, depending on the price plan. Look at what's going on with GHG content when those timer peaks go off. When people start using their timers to charge, they're charging at some of the worst times in terms of the cleanliness of energy that's coming out of your wall in Ontario. So again, another issue with having these sort of blunt controls in terms of time use prices to shape EV charging. Was there a question, or am I just getting feedback? Feedback.
They're working. I just want to add one more thing. The time of use pricing is kind of, set by the ISO to balance supply and demand, right? So, they're looking at, what gas peaker plants are available, stuff like that. Not necessarily the raw carbon emissions, right? They're looking at what's cheaper, what's easier, right? What assets do we have online?
Yeah, so that's a good point. It's a mismatch between, actually preserving the grid in the long run and actually running cleaner energy versus what's economically expedient right now, right? The last thing here, which I alluded to earlier, is that you can get a bunch of people charging at the same time. And this is an interesting one. This is from a day in early January when everyone was coming off holidays. At the beginning of 2025, we had cold weather, and we had this day where we had this massive peak of charging load, which shows up in purple here. This is the equivalent of about a third of all the vehicles on our platform charging at the same time. So remember at that Ontario bar graph, I was saying, how many might plug in at the same time? Can actually be quite a few. Not 100%, but 30% is a pretty serious amount of energy as adoption of EVs increases, especially on the residential grid where it was not designed for that kind of electrical load to be at the household. All right. So that's time of use rates. From there, we want to move forward into demand response because we have a bunch of data on this now. We ran, I think, 180 total demand response events over the course of this project we've run with the IESO and with Hydro Ottawa. Basically, all of these were right here at home in our city, so we're curtailing EVs in this area to get it done. How this works in the background is it's kind of like an auction system, and it's typically designed for really large loads on the grid like factories. So if you have a bunch of assembly line equipment with one big switch that you can turn off and it takes like a megawatt off the grid all at once, you can auction your willingness to do that in this marketplace with the IESO and get paid quite a bit for it. Do you mind clicking through a few more times, Alex, since there's a build on this? Yeah, so the idea here is you get a bunch of large loads to switch off all at the same time, and you can take the peak off the grid in the region when it's really, really bad on a hot summer day. And it's worth a ton of money. If you take a look at the values here for a megawatt of load, it's like thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the situation. But it's a big revenue stream for the types of companies or facilities that use a lot of electricity. Yeah. So we've been doing this with EVs, as I mentioned, and we're actually able to see in the area of 1 megawatt in evenings and overnight periods with 1,000 EVs. So to get to that point where those kind of numbers become viable for demand response, you need 1,000 EVs to be pulled together into an aggregated pool and available for demand response. So that's actually not bad, right? That's not a crazy number of EVs. We have 1,000 times 1,000 in Canada already. And if we can aggregate these and get them, properly coordinated into the bidding systems and stuff for utilities and system operators, there's a lot of value to be pulled from that and to be passed back down to drivers and owners of these assets, ideally. As I mentioned, these are assets that are being put on the grid by private consumers who bought a vehicle. They're not something that's been paid for and funded by the utilities. So it's only reasonable that they should be looking to kind of rent that back from the people who own them. So really quickly, I think we got a lot of app users in the audience, so I don't know if we need to belabor this, but the way the process works is once you're linked and set up on the platform, we're going to monitor whether your vehicle's plugged in. If it's plugged in at a site where you've said it's okay to be curtailed at one of your home charging locations, and a DR event is called by the utility, your vehicle is going to be automatically checked for eligibility. Is it plugged in? Does it have enough SOC that we can interfere with it without missing your departure target in the morning? And is it plugged in at your charging site? We don't want to be curtailing your vehicle if it's plugged in at an en route and you're trying to get somewhere, right? So yeah, if all those are check boxes, then you're given a push notification in the app, and you can say whether or not you want to participate. Maybe you change your mind, you don't feel like it this time, that's fine. You can opt out. We found with that screening step and with the opt-in by default model, we're seeing participation rates that are really, really high. Basically, our goal is to make it as non-invasive as possible so it doesn't mess with your schedule. You don't really notice it happening. You have the option to opt out, and we've seen the opt-out rates over the course of all those events were in the area of 4%. So yeah, we really, really good for participation. I think we maybe been a little bit too conservative in terms of how aggressively we screen vehicles. So in future, we might start pushing people that option more often and see if we're able to increase that capacity above a megawatt per 1,000 vehicles, therefore making the pool of EVs even more valuable to the grid. There's some challenges with demand response that we found. I think one of the biggest ones is that EVs are obviously not a factory all in one place. 1,000 EVs each have their own usage schedules. They don't plug in consistently at exactly the same time every day. They don't charge at the same time every week. So there's a lot of modeling to be done on our side to understand what the confidence bounds are on the availability of that EV pool, and making sure that we can provide utilities with high confidence in terms of what they can buy from us in terms of capacity. So yeah, not the same picture as a factory, and we're seeing a bit of a change in terms of a bunch of utilities around the world. Europe's a big leader in this, but moving towards more of a grid flexibility model that accommodates assets like EVs. So they're not expecting the same capacity to be available for 9 hours of the day. They can accept that, you know, it's going to be higher later in the evening when more people are plugged in, for example. And then in terms of where we're going, again, if you're an app user, you're probably familiar with this concept already, but we've rolled up the demand on the grid and the carbon intensity of the generation mix on the grid in real time. And we've put together a model that predicts it 24 hours ahead. And we're using this now to actively coordinate EV charging. So if we know that there's going to be cleaner energy later, we can defer some of the EV charging in aggregate to prefer those later times, and basically reduce strain on the grid and make sure that the EVs are being charged with cleaner energy, ideally, which is the goal of many people when they buy one in the first place. Move on from there. I think one of the most powerful things we can offer with this is dealing with that crazy peak that we saw. So that example I gave you where we had one night where 30% of the EVs were charging all at the same time, without going outside of the ultra low rate window, we could move that amount of energy around over the 8 hours and reduce that peak by theoretically 35%. We've yet to demonstrate this, but that's one of the next things we want to do this year with the connected EV pool, is start doing these more, instead of reactive demand response events where we switch off for an hour in response to grid conditions, we want to move towards actively managing the effect on the grid by pushing and shaping the load. So as an individual driver, you shouldn't see much difference from this. You know, you might be at the 11 p.m. time slot one night, you might be at the 4 a.m. time slot another night. It's going to be automated so that you, you know, if you've said you need 80% at 7 a.m., it's going to respect that still with safety margin. But in aggregate from the grid level, when you look at the shape of the load for these hundreds of vehicles or 1,000 vehicles, it goes from this to this, and that means many more years of useful transformer life on the residential grid. So again, potentially very, very valuable for utilities, for grid operators, and something that we want to enable EV drivers to benefit from if they're providing that service.
It's also cheaper and cleaner power.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I would just point out that right now we're confined by the ULO rate, right? So Raymond, as you communicated to us before, under no circumstance should we charge during expensive hours, right? But imagine, you know, 5-10 years from now, if we have like dynamic pricing, or, you know, we're able to shift outside of the confines of the ULO rate, and then maybe you guys get a rebate on your bill instead, right? Because you've helped to, you know, we could theoretically get higher than 35% reduction rate. And then, you know, the utility and ISO should rightfully compensate you guys for the extra, for pushing you into the expensive period, right? So.
Yeah, that was actually sort of, can I try asking my question? Because it was sort of a similar idea. My thing was, with your technology, could you not have a system where you are like able to move the ULO right to other times, even like during the day? If you've got a lot of solar out, wouldn't you be able to say, if I can charge at 2.5 cents, I'll charge at 2 p.m. If I can charge at my cheap rate? Would you be able to not allow that to happen?
That's absolutely possible, technically. One of the big challenges we face is the regulatory space we're working in, right? Like utilities and system operators are very slow to change how they do business. They're very slow to change the rules around how they interact financially with their rate base. And a lot of the time their hands are tied. Like one of the challenges we have right now is from the OEB level, they have very strict rules about what can be done with ratepayer money. Which correctly so, right? Like utilities should be tightly managed. They should be obligated to do fair business and operate resilient grids. But it means that the thing that you just proposed, which is a very good idea, and I think is, you know, the correct model we need to move towards, takes a long time to get implemented typically.
Working now? I just want to mention, in California, they're already incenting people to charge during the day because they have excess solar, right?
Yeah. This is actually the case. I think Australia has had a bunch of this recently too. They have negative wholesale pricing where you will be paid to take energy off the grid if you're a large consumer because there's too much solar and it's got to go somewhere. So yeah, it's a reality in a lot of markets. And, as things get more volatile here with electrification increasing and climate change, we might see similar situations from time to time.
Yeah, speaking of Australia, I was wondering if you guys have looked at that use case and like, for example, the solar that's on the grid and then the battery backups that they have there. And then there's, I think there's a lot more ease of installation in terms of the regulatory space. I've heard that for example, it's my understanding that if I wanted to have a battery system in my house, I would need engineer approval from Hydro Ottawa, perhaps even the province. I'm not sure how complicated it is, but in Australia, I think you can get a battery system in your house in like a week, and it costs a lot less. And I'm wondering if you guys are pushing the regulators at all in those kinds of directions.
Yeah, so we're working on a project with another municipality in Atlantic Canada on exactly that. So there's, as part of this project, actually, we deployed 2 batteries within the Ottawa region. So there's one at Area XO. It's near the Nepean Sportsplex. And then there's another one within one of the substations at Hydro Ottawa near Bell's Quarters. And let me tell you, the certifications that we had to go through to get these front-of-the-meter batteries installed, because Hydro Ottawa, rightfully so, they have all these obligations to everyone else they're connected to, right? If we start putting assets there that are then controlled by third party, us, it shouldn't be easy to do, right? There's a lot of cybersecurity stuff that needs to be addressed. So we did all that. Now we're looking at installing 500 or 1,000 batteries at different people's houses. Every site's going to need its own safety certs, stuff like that. So we're looking into it, and then hopefully combining it with what we've done here, right? So imagine a smart city, smart grid with in the future with EV intelligent charging, with the residential BESS at the battery or at the household, thermostats and heat pumps, stuff like that, right? And having it all under an umbrella that can kind of manage it, right? There's parts in Canada that are, like Ontario is summer peaking right now, right? It's, summer and fall peaking. More recently, it's been September as well. But there are provinces in Canada that are winter peaking or dual peaking, right? And in the afternoon and stuff, because they have so much electrification for heating, especially in the winter. So yeah, it's something that we're looking at.
Will probably be winter peaking as well.
Yeah, and there's kind of it's interesting because, what we see in other parts of the world, 67% of new electrical demand is AC, especially in developing nations. Here we see I don't have the exact numbers, but there's a trade-off between, heat pumps and the lower range of where they're functional, and then resistive heating, right? So we've been seeing a lot of that in terms of kind of the funny way in which peaks behave in those types of provinces. So.
We've got maybe one more slide. I don't want to eat up too much more time. But actually this one, I think one of the important points here is that in terms of what we can do usefully for the grid, there's sort of a stack of value you can realize with distributed energy resources on the residential grid. There's protecting your immediate home street with the transformer at the end of the road, making sure that your 10 EVs or whatever on the street, eventually when that's a reality, aren't all charging at the same time to protect that immediate local residential load. But you can also reserve capacity to protect things at the substation level. And you can do system-wide things like soaking up renewable energy when it's available and holding some capacity available for high-value energy market when there's emergency capacity needed. So if you're organizing this pool of vehicles, you can be doing all of these things at once. Make sure there's a cap on the residential streets. Make sure you have some capacity available for functions, at the city or substation level, right on up to a province-wide network and helping to balance out generation and demand. So a lot of cool stuff we can do with this sort of simultaneously once we have the vehicles on the platform. And then I guess just to sort of speak to next steps here, as we mentioned, we're winding up a great big project with the IESO and with Hydro Ottawa right now. We worked for a month or two on the final report through December, and that's been submitted now. We anticipate there might be some changes to how compensation mechanisms work. They've been doing on-bill credits as part of that project. As I mentioned, that's something that has to be evaluated because there was sort of a special permission as part of the innovation project to be able to do that. But we're committed to continuing to support this market with, some form of compensation, whether that's in-app or otherwise. And, even though we're moving past this initial project with Hydro Ottawa, there's still a lot of work to be done from the IESO Ontario-wide level, and we're still doing that work. So the solution's staying live, and we're excited to keep innovating and excited to keep trying new stuff with this kind of platform.
I had some specific questions about the app. In particular, like for example, you have some badges, like one called EV Insider, that says awarded for joining an EV club through an invite. So I was wondering if EVCO can reward this badge to new members, or
we'll chat with Raymond about that.
Okay, great.
Maybe we can take this offline. I don't want to take up too much of your schedule, but after the other presentations, maybe we can chat in a little more detail.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have some specifics about my particular installation, and yeah, I won't get into that now.
Definitely. Happy to help. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for your time again, and always a pleasure.
Guess I'll take this one. Okay, so thanks a lot. And there's a lot of people with more feedback about the app, right? But the one thing that I would like to see is what you're saying that you want to get to, where the system worries about when it's charged. I don't give a darn, as long as it's ready in the morning. Doesn't matter when it's charged, right? So the more proactive we could be to reduce that peak, the better it is, right? So next is Stephen, who will be doing his presentation on his trip to Japan. Working. There we go.
Thank you very much. And that's the forward?
No, that's backward.
And that's forward right there?
Right there.
Okay, thank you. Hi, for the people that don't know me, my name is Stephen Bailey, and I've probably been to Japan 12 or 13 times in the last 24 years. And the reason why, my wife is from Nagano, Japan. And after tasting the Olympics in 1998, she decided to come to Ottawa, Canada, where I met her when she was working at the Tulip Festival as the international coordinator. So we went in 2019 as a family, then COVID hit. So for different reasons, we didn't go back to last year, and we spent 2 weeks in Japan. We traveled all over the country. So it was amazing to me to see how little things have changed in the last 6 years. Oh, you have to be, okay. Okay, there you go. Slide. Okay, there's the agenda. And just give you a minute. You don't need me to read it out. Next, please. So I was I've read into this, but to see like between 2019 and 2025, it didn't seem from a very subjective level there was any change in the amount of electric vehicles in Japan. And it's, can you hear me? Okay, good. So I guess the first time, about 2013, I arrived in Tokyo. Right outside Tokyo Station, there's an electric vehicle taxi stand with little Mitsubishis and first generation Nissan Leafs. And I thought that was pretty cool. And this is 13 years ago. So what happened? Well, we'll get it right into that. But I'm thinking, and we'll look at it, that things could change this year. Next slide, please. So just to give a little background, I think Japan, for a number of reasons, is ripe for EV adoption. First of all, 97% of fuel is imported, and it's never a good thing. When it was cut off, the last time it was cut off to Japan, it didn't work out well for the Japanese, to say the least. So China has the same type of issue, and they decide to electrify in a really big way. And right now, from what I've been reading, over half the vehicles in Japan are electric, being built right now. Here's the issue for the last 15 years. Hydrogen. And they're not the only ones. In this forum right here, I've heard people advocate for hydrogen. So they're not the only ones. But I think things are changing. And here's something else. I think Japan, and just from looking around, they have a high level of environmental consciousness. It's every place you go is clean. You don't see garbage on the side. You see solar everywhere. People drive small cars. There's no big, I have to have a Dodge Ram or an F-150. You just don't see that type of truck unless you're a contractor. And most cars are either yellow plate, that's like a K car, 40% in the market. And the bigger cars are all like little Honda, like Civic type of cars. And then there's a few Mercedes and Audis and that type of thing, but not a whole lot. So I spent 2 weeks there, and you can see the cities I visited, including the biggest city in the world, Tokyo, with a population basically of Canada. It's just a whole trip in itself. So next slide, please. So you see the cities right there. We started out in Tokyo. That's where we landed. We went to Nagano, and then we hit the island of Kyushu, which is a beautiful part of Japan. Not too many people go to. I highly recommend it. Next slide. So you see right there, 97% of fuel is imported, and something like 96% comes from the Middle East. Not a good solution for Japan's security. Next slide. So I was down in Kagoshima, and I was driving along the coast of this bay, and I observed this huge set of oil tanks. And I got talking to people and looked into it, and that oil, those tanks will hold 2 weeks of fuel oil, crude, for the entire country. Those tanks are so big, you could put a baseball field on top of a lot of them. It's just gigantic. But you'll see what happens here. They're taken from here, they're shipped from the Middle East, they come here, and then the crude is sent up by another tanker to northern Kyushu or Honshu. And then it's refined, and then it's sent all over Japan, and not by pipeline, because there's not a whole lot of pipelines in the country. Next slide. Sorry? What, the tanks? No, they're not. No. So you see like there's a couple of choke points, and all sorts of different bad actors could really, and the Japanese are not stupid, they're aware of this. You take a look at the choke points, it could be stopped really, really quickly. Next slide. The first place we visited after Tokyo was Nagano. We stayed right by the Nagano supercharger, and it's maybe about an hour and a bit by high-speed train from Tokyo. And beautiful city. And next slide. So I stayed at the Nagano Matsushiro Hotel, which is the site of one of the first superchargers in all of Japan. And they have a DC fast charger and a couple of level 2s. You can see the expressway up in the top left of the slide. One Chatamo as well. And it was never busy. And I've driven by before, and I didn't see any change in the amount of cars going there. And at the same time, the actual spots for the chargers are close to the hotel door. And I've traveled a lot in the United States, and I've come 11 o'clock at night to a hotel that has a charger, and there's an F-150 parked in there, and you got a minimum wage clerk in there who's not going to do anything about it, because why would they? So just on the right-hand side of the slide, you see the Boundary Road. I was coming back from Montreal. The first week was open. There's some dude pulled in his truck and trailer, taking up about 3/4 of the spots on that site. And he was there for quite a while because I never saw him. Anyways, next slide, please. We went to Fukuoka, about the population of Montreal. They got a fairly dense network, a lot of Chatamo chargers. The electric vehicles were maybe Sakura, the Leaf, the Model 3, and the Model Y. Big city. So then to Kagoshima, about the size of Halifax. And Volkswagen's trying to sell the ID Buzz. And the only one I saw in 2 weeks was in the showroom. And for $95,000, the Japanese are just not biting. they missed the mark on this one. So that was kind of interesting in itself. Okay, next slide. Then on to Kumamoto, about the size of Ottawa. Not too many EVs in the southern part of Japan, the city of Kyushu, in Kyushu. That was when I first spotted my first Model X, right at the train station. And these train stations, you know, they're 9 stories high with about 40 restaurants, theaters, everything. There's a hotel that we stayed right connected to the train station. So you arrive by train, a lot of these cities, there's hotels, everything you need to do. There's office buildings within like a 5-minute block away. So they really figured a lot of things about how getting people around to do what they need to do. It's not spread out. You go to Ottawa, and I guess you could walk across the Queensway to the conference center, and that's about it. Or maybe you go to the baseball game if you're into that. Next slide, Tokyo. And Tokyo is just, I can't really describe it. It's a city with maybe a half a dozen downtowns, and they have trains or 12 cars, and they come every 2.5 minutes from what they call the Yamanote line. If anybody's been to Tokyo, you know what I mean. But a lot of Teslas were spotted there, and it's just because of the money and the wealth it's concentrated in Tokyo. And I say the 3 biggest, I think the 4th biggest Tokyo station is not there, but the 3 biggest train stations, subway stations in the world are those 3 you see on your screen. Shinjuku has 3 million people a day going through that one station. That population of Vancouver through one station. So just over 2 weeks, I would say the Nissan Sakura, it's a beautiful little car. You know, there's a nice picture of one right there. I never saw a Chinese-made car like a BYD. They do have dealerships there. I know that for a fact. I never saw a Korean car. I know Hyundai's making a pitch to sell Korean cars again. And I never saw an American-made car except for Tesla. And I kept on seeing these Jeeps around, and I asked my wife, what's with the Jeeps here? They look completely different. Yeah, she said, they're made by Mitsubishi. They put the Jeep brand on there so people feel like they're getting like the Jeep experience. So I didn't see any of these MIEVs that I saw back in 2013. Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to get into that, but I can answer you now. It's a cultural thing. So imagine if you're in Greenland and Elon Musk says, I want to open a Tesla dealer and sell a bunch of Cybertrucks. Okay, so I didn't see a single hydrogen car, not one. And hybrids are gaining a lot of popularity. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and I did the slide deck up in December. I have a postscript because I can make predictions. Predictions they're hard to get correct. Okay, Sakura, Leaf, and the Leaf are dominating. Tesla has shown incremental growth. They never brought the Cybertruck to Japan. You have to understand the streets are narrow. They have the parking garages have elevators that take the cars up. The Cybertruck, the Model S, and the Model X are too heavy to go in those elevators. So Tesla wised up, and they no longer sell those 3 vehicles you see there. So I looked it up. Less than 3,000 BYDs sold nationwide between January and September. They're not buying the old BZ4X. They only sold 18 in the month of August 2025. 18. Think of that. We'll see something in another slide. But they have lots of chargers everywhere you go. Next slide. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think Nissan, I wrote this in December 25, will continue to dominate. Toyota is rolling out better EVs. And I think Toyota is finally making a pivot away from hydrogen. They've seen the writing on the wall. Honda and others are rolling out new EVs, and they have a whole, like I could spend a whole slide deck talking about that, but we don't have the time. Tesla continues to expand their supercharging network. Last I looked, they had like something like 141 different sites across Japan. For a country that size, that's a lot of different sites. So they have a fairly dense network wherever you go in Japan. And they only sell the 3-in-1. It makes their business model a lot simpler. New EVs, there's new companies coming up into that space. And BYD is a juggernaut, and they are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars to crack that market. And I don't think they're going to do it. That's my personal belief. I could be wrong. It's hard to say. I think the charging infrastructure will continue densifying. And I think because of all the reasons, geopolitical reasons, economic, environmental reasons, you're going to see an explosion of electric vehicles over the next 4 or 5 years in Japan. Next slide. There's the, it's called the BZ, the Japanese call it the BZ4X in Japan. Beautiful car, I've driven it, and I always wonder what WLTC stands for. It's right there for you. I would never remember that. And here in Canada, I think they start for about 43K when I looked up in the Toyota Canada website. Next slide. And there's an interesting little vehicle, and I sort of picked someone asked about like they have a handicapped son or daughter. Oh, that vehicle is so adaptable. You can put a wheelchair on it, you can turn it around. And it's sort of like a really interesting solution to that type of thing. And it doesn't have to go a long way because Japanese cities tend to be fairly compact, and it's cheap. Next. There's the next generation Nissan Leaf. They're still popular in Japan. Nissan is continuing to refine their product. And I believe they've, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're moving away from Chatamo. I think Chatamo is a dead end. Are they still shipping Chatamo cars here? Okay. Yeah, I think, okay, next slide. And there's a Honda N1E. That's a cute little vehicle. I don't think it's you know, I don't know if it's selling in Canada, but it's for Japan, that's a wonderful little K car type of thing. Next slide. And here's what's really caught my eye. Look, one day we're all going to be old. And do we want to really phone up your kid and say, hey, do you mind forgetting about your kids and drive me my doctors? So this was made for the guy who's like 83 years old, and he just wanted to gets to the doctor's office. He wants to get to the grocery store. He doesn't want to take Uber. He wants his own independence. And it's dirt cheap. And who cares? And he can plug it in on 110, and that's what it takes. 110, not 220, 110. So it's just an amazing little car that I think you're going to see a lot of when you go to Japan in about a year or two from now. Next slide. So you see it right there. The Japanese know they're between a rock and a hard place. They have environmental issues and security issues. And the question, hydrogen or electric? And from what I've seen and what I've read, I think they're going electric. And I think hydrogen it's always going to be there, but basically dead for now. There it is on the left. There's Mirai. Look at the numbers sold on the left. And there's the Sakura on the right, just in Japan. Next slide. So one more slide, and we'll go back to questions. Next slide, please. So I took a look in early February. Look, we had 18 sold in August 25. In the last 3 quarters with the new Toyota BZ, they sold almost 3,500. That's something like a 2,100% year over year. I think the year before they sold maybe about 130. Tesla has really ramped up their game. They've focused on the 3 and the Y, and they've really ramped up. BYD sold 3,870 in 2025. But you know what? In January, look at the numbers for January. There's a lot of political issues between the two countries. So good luck to BYD. And I know Hyundai's trying to get in there. They didn't crack the top 25 in the overall market.
So BYD, by the way, the reason it's like that is probably because they'll bring a ship every so many months, and they probably didn't have any stock at that time, so there may be much more sales a month after, right? So it's very, very bumpy, right?
The BYD is planning a very aggressive, I think they're looking at, by the end of 2026, have something like 150 dealerships across Japan. They're not giving up, and they're pouring a lot of resources into it. Questions? Did I answer your question about Japan and China and Korea? Okay. Any other questions? Sure. I'm not like you hear a lot, but I haven't seen anything. But maybe some other people in the room know more about it than I do. Okay, so that yeah. So say again.
Toyota is famous for funding misinformation online and whatnot, in North America at least. Judging by the low pickup of EVs in Japan, I wonder if it's the same there.
I can't really say. I think the Japanese have the concept of face that's a lot stronger there than it is here. It's pretty hard for the chairman of Toyota said, like, for the last 15 years we'd be wrong. But I think they're pivoting away, and they don't want to make a big deal of it. And I think you're going to see like the Toyota Mirai go away. They've been trying for 15 years to market and sell that car. It's never worked out. Okay.
Sell it with a Japanese label, or is that
anything is possible.
The BZ3 in China is badge Toyota. It's made by BYD.
Okay.
So they're already doing some stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for me.
All right. Thanks a lot. Okay. I guess we'll get right into the news. I don't know what we're doing on time here, but hopefully the clicker works now if I just do this. Ooh, there we go. Okay. So as everyone probably knows, we have a new EV rebate. It's back, and I would say better than ever, but not really. It's the same, basically. It's $5,000, but only if the car is worth less than $50,000, and only if it's from a country that has free trade with Canada, unless it's built in Canada, and then the $50,000 doesn't apply. And then PHEVs get $2,500, and then it like scales down every year, $1,000. It's complicated, but it's here. And yeah, there was a question in the back. No, we do not have free trade with China, so there would be no Chinese EVs qualifying for this, but the Koreans do, because we do have a free trade agreement with Korea and with Europe. So BMWs, they're all fair game. They actually have a website with a list of all the cars, and it's getting updated. People were freaking out because there weren't that many cars on the list. And then I checked the next day, and then there were more cars, and then so they're adding cars as we go right now. So it's getting updated rapidly. Maybe there were a few. Yeah. And I think there were some Japanese cars in there somehow, so I don't know how that worked out because we don't have free trade with Japan, but whatever.
The list is far from being complete, and if you look on Ford's web, just to give you an idea, if you look on Ford's website these days, they have huge discounts on the Mach-E, which makes them less than 50,000, so they should be eligible also.
Yeah, so expect car companies to do the fun tricks that they did with the last rebate program, which is make cars that just qualify by $1 underneath the limit or whatever, and shenanigans.
Well, no, the
theoretically,
total,
yeah.
The total price has to be.
Yeah, the total price has to be under 50K.
Under
so
50K.
we'll see what happens, but this is a good thing for the industry. There we go. Right, did I do? Yeah, okay. As part of the announcement, the government also announced $1.5 billion to be invested in charging infrastructure. And they've actually already announced $84 million as being committed to 8,000 new EV charging stations across Canada, but there's no details on who got that money or where it's going to be, or hopefully Renfrew.
And what about uptime? Are they actually going to have any uptime requirements for this stuff, or they don't invest in broken technologies?
I didn't hear uptime requirements. I don't know the details. But the PM does want to double Canada's electricity generation somehow, so I guess we're going to be building more nuclear, which is stupid. I oppose that, but I think wind and solar and batteries are the way to go, so hopefully they're not stupid in trying to do what Doug Ford wants to do and make our electricity more expensive. All right. Oh, speaking of Doug Ford, he wants to boycott Chinese EVs because who wants cheap cars that are good and have good range? He cites unsubstantiated claims that Chinese EVs will spy on Canadians, forgetting that every single Canadian has a spy device in their pocket called a phone, and they're all made in China. So he's ridiculous. I give up on him. I'm done. All right, South Korea. They intend to bring manufacturing to Canada. This is part of our agreement with South Korea, assuming we buy their submarines, which I hope we do because they're awesome, or self-propelled artillery. You know, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that China make, or that South Korea makes, and Hyundai makes tanks. And so if we go through with this, then they will likely bring manufacturing to Canada, and it turns out that Kami, the GM plant, might be free to be taken over by the Koreans. So yeah, America's loss is our gain. Germany is also considering manufacturing in Canada. They have a battery plant down in St. Thomas, Ontario, that will be making batteries for the Scout Motors brand and possibly other VW cars. And again, their manufacturing is dependent on whether we buy German submarines. So who knew that submarines and EVs paired so well together? But there you go. All right, next. Toyota has suddenly made 4 EVs out of nowhere. So the famously anti-EV Toyota, as we've been just talking about, they've announced no less than 4 new cars. They're all up on the top here of the slide. So we've got on the left the CHR, which is like a little hot hatch all-wheel drive thing. There's the BZ, which takes over for the BZ4X, or the BizForks as I used to call it. There's the BZ Woodland, which is basically an Outback. And then there's the Highlander, which is a 3-row ginormous SUV, but it only comes in EV now. It used to be a gas car, now it's only electric. So if you're in the market for a Toyota, as many people seem to be, they now have sort of options to cover everybody except pickup trucks. So, interesting. The prices aren't fully announced for everything. The first 3 of those cars will be coming out this year. And then the Highlander is going to be a 2027 model year coming out at the end of this year. So, well done, Toyota. I'm usually in these segments, I am like not nice to Toyota because of all of their anti-EV nonsense. But this is a good thing. This is good for us and for everybody because Toyota people are like brand loyal like crazy. Speaking of Subaru Outbacks, Subaru has an electric Outback. It's called the Trail Seeker. And I think so this is all the specs. You can read the slide if you want. But the most important thing about this car is that it costs the same as an Outback today. So you can either buy an electric Outback or a gas Outback and spend more money on gas. And so like it's price parity. And the trims are the same. And actually, if you compare trim to trim, some Trail Seeker models at the same trim as the Outback are a few $100 less than the Outback version. So if you're in the market for an Outback, don't buy an Outback, buy a Trail Seeker, because that would be stupid to buy an Outback because then you're spending $2,000 a year on gas when you don't have to. Buy the Trail. It's the same car. Look at it. And if you go on YouTube, Alex on Autos, he does really good car reviews. He compared them side by side, and they're essentially identical cars. He's like, the Outback's a little bit bigger, like an inch or 2 in some dimensions, and a little bit shorter in others. And he's like, they're the same car. Just get the Trail Seeker. He's like, the Outback is slower, it has less power, and it burns gas, and it has all the gas annoyances of oil and noise and vibration and things that break, whereas the Trail Seeker doesn't. So there you go. Well, so this is Subaru's second car. Their first car, if you forgot, is the Solterra, which is a BZ4X. They're still making that. And the other thing. So the Solterra, which is formerly Subaru's only EV, was built by Toyota. And so now Toyota's building this and the Woodland in Subaru's factories. So like it's very confusing. Yeah, well, it's a BizForks. Yeah. It's an SUV thing. It's like a RAV4 kind of thing. It's this exact car as the BZ. It's the same exact vehicle. They just put a new bumper on it to make it look Subaru. And they changed some colors or something. I don't know. Next, okay. Cool study came out. So you know how people are always like, EV batteries don't last. You have to replace your battery after like 5 years, and oh my God, this is horrible. So there's actually data that just came out. Diagnostics company called Generational, and I have the report if you want it, just let me know and I will email it to you. It's free. They released a study of more than 8,000 tests across 36 automaker brands, and they found that the average EV battery state of health in the entire fleet is at 95% of its original capacity. And this covers EVs from 0 years old to 12 years old. These are odometer readings anywhere from 0 kilometers to 160,000 miles, 250,000 kilometers for those who actually respect units. Other things that they found, 4 to 5 year old EVs, the median health, so that's not the average, but the median, the middle car, 93% battery health after 5 years. 8 to 9 year old cars, 85% health. So you're not going to get your warranty coverage. You don't need it because the battery's going to be healthier than the 80% coverage limit. High mileage EVs, 100,000 miles. I didn't convert that because whatever. 88 to 95% state of health. And so what they found is that basically the kilometers don't matter, which is kind of what we've been telling people, is that it doesn't matter.
Mike,
yes, 160,000.
They have a lab down in Dell, and they've been looking into this. And they're saying they're looking between 2 and 3 million kilometers.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just backing up. It's like we know this is the data. This is just a new study that says the same thing that we've been saying for 10 years now. And eventually, maybe people will listen to data instead of feelings. But the right wing likes their feelings. All right, new study finds that once you go EV, you don't go back. Again, something else that we already know. But J.D. Power, again, this year, they've run this study. I don't know how many times. I think I have it in here somewhere. Maybe I didn't write it, but whatever. They've run this study many years in a row now. And they keep finding that people don't want to lose their EV. Like if they get a new car, it's not going to be a gas one. So 96% is the number to keep in mind. So you can say to people that 96% of EV owners will buy another EV after their first one is old or they don't want it anymore. They have a 1,000-point scale. Premium EVs weirdly includes the Model 3, which I don't think is premium, but whatever. It's the best premium car, according to owner satisfaction. Mass market, it was the Mustang Mach-E, so congrats to anybody who owns a Mustang. So I don't know about their methodology here, because seriously, Ioniq 5 is a much better car, but whatever, it's just me. Never mind. Also, PHEV owners are 100 points less satisfied than EV owners. So there you go. Too many. There we go. All right, and yet another study. Sorry, I like data. It's been a while. I haven't done the news in a while, and so I like data. The biggest study yet has shown that plug-in hybrids use 300% more fuel than claimed. Shocking. And this is yet another real-world study of over 1 million vehicles. Question in the back. That is correct.
So actually, in a lot of cities, they have congestion charges where these qualify.
I was going to talk about.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So, okay, this is the Fraunhofer Institute. So obviously in Germany, and they were looking at European vehicles, and they did almost 1 million vehicles across Europe. And as Raymond was about to steal my thunder, saying, a lot of municipalities in Europe have congestion charging where they have zones in their city, like London has congestion zones, and so plug-in hybrids get preferential treatment in those zones just because they're a plug-in hybrid, not necessarily because they're actually been plugged in. And so wealthy people will buy they will buy expensive plug-in hybrids and then never plug them in because they just want to be douchebags and drive downtown London with a gas car and get away with it. So if you have money, you can break the law. Crime is legal. Yay, America. Okay, they were supposed to use on average 1.57 liters per 100, but in fact they use an average of 6. So 3 times worse. Polestar. There's a Chinese EV. Swedish-based company, Chinese owned for those who didn't know. They are launching 4 new cars in the next 3 years, which is pretty crazy. They announced this year that the Polestar 4 is going to get a new variant because the 4 is already out, for those who don't know. It's going to be a station wagon. So wagons are back, baby. We got the Outback thing that's electric, and now we got the Polestar 4 wagon. It's going to be built in South Korea, not in China. And this is good for Canada because we have free trade with South Korea. So rebate, baby. Meanwhile, European deliveries of the 5 will begin this summer. I don't know if that's coming to Canada. Hopefully it does. And a new generation of the Polestar 2 will be making its debut soon, maybe this summer. And there will also be a Polestar 7 in 2028. It's an SUV. Rivian R2 is entering final validation this month. So it has started its validation testing for its imminent release to the wild, unwashed masses. It's going to be a mass market EV starting at $45K US, so a gazillion Canadian pesos. Lightly camouflaged versions have been all over YouTube, so if you're interested in that, literally every car YouTuber has a review of it, and they all love it because it's cool. BYD's new SUV offers 700 kilometers of range for $35,000 Canadian. Canadian pesos. So, well, you can only buy it in China right now. But maybe they will bring it. It's below the 50,000 limit, and it's, you know, under 35K, so maybe it'll qualify for tariff things.
I saw something today that BYD is supposed to be bringing 4 EVs to Canada.
Well, this would be a good candidate. So it's their newest, it's the Song Ultra EV, because got to have the Ultra in there. It's coming soon to China. It will be equipped with a single front motor, which is weird, but it's 270 kilowatts, so powerful enough. It has 2 battery pack options, 75 kilowatt hours and 82 kilowatt hours, so not overly enormous, which is interesting. It's expected to launch by the end of this year, and no word if it comes to Canada or Canada maybe. But there you go. Such things exist. It's a magical unicorn. All right, Ford teased a $30,000 medium pickup truck. You can kind of see the silhouette in the slide here. It recently canceled the F-150, so timing is not their thing. It's built on the Universal Electric Vehicle platform, which is a new thing in their skunk works that they're making out in California with a bunch of boffins and some engineers. And supposedly $30,000 US launch next year sometime. It's adaptable to all sorts of different shapes and whatever. But they're going to come out with a medium-sized, Maverick-sized pickup truck, supposedly first. So, yeah, if you want that. Oh, and it's going to use LFP batteries, which is cool. So this actually might be a very compelling truck. It's going to be unibody, so the truck bros are going to be like, it's not a body on frame, but whatever. It's a truck that's, you don't even use your truck for truck things. It sits in a driveway, let's be honest. All right, first country to ban new gas cars is doing just fine.
All-wheel drive available, or only front wheel, or only rear wheel?
Unknown at this point. They didn't really talk about that. So presumably they could do, and it's a skateboard platform, so they could do whatever they want, but we don't know. So Ethiopia, for those who don't know, made history in 2024 when it banned new internal combustion vehicles from being imported or sold in the country, right? So talk about a sales ban, eh? And despite the dire predictions and hysterics from the oil industry that we've all heard in Canada, because, oh my God, Trudeau's a communist or whatever, I don't know. They actually did it because it wasn't for environmental reasons, it's because Ethiopia depends 100% on imported energy, just like Japan. And it's imported oil, yeah. And they can't refine their own oil, so they have to like import all the expensive stuff. And they don't have a lot of foreign currency, which is what you have to use to buy oil. So rather than expend all of their foreign currency on oil, they decided, why don't we just ban gas cars and then make everyone drive electric cars? So that's what they did. And with the savings, they used their scarce foreign currency to buy hydropower dams that they built. And they create apparently 8 gigawatts of new capacity coming on the grid. And they have so much electricity now that they're actually selling it to their neighboring countries. So they've gone from an energy importer to an energy exporter. And I think it says it here in the slide, hopefully 8.3% of the total vehicle fleet now on the road after a year, basically, is electric, right? Yeah, I don't have any stats on that, but Africa is skipping a lot of the stuff that we did. So they went right to cell phone. They gave up. They didn't do the landline thing. They're going right to solar and battery because it's cheaper. And like, why would you do anything else? So yeah, they're doing a lot of skip stuff. So good for Ethiopia. We don't really talk about the developing world too much, but congrats to them. And yeah, they're selling electricity to Kenya, Tanzania, and Djibouti. Tesla corner. So sorry, okay, Craig, don't get mad at me, but literally every news article about Tesla this month was negative. So just bear with me, okay? It's not personal. Well, I mean, it is. Elon is an idiot, but it's not because I hate Tesla. I like what Tesla's doing. It's just they changed their mission statement from advancing the world to EVs or electrification or clean energy to making the world's first trillionaire, which is stupid. Anyway, so they've announced they're killing off the S and X next quarter. The Model S has been in production since 2012. It's an epic EV. It's a really nice car, and they just gave up on it and stopped improving it, and so now it's died on the vine, so they killed it off, which is a shame. Model X started in 2015, so about a decade ago, and also being killed off because they share a platform. No word on the Cybertruck, though. This is the second year in a row now that they've reported declining sales, possibly because their CEO is a little controversial, maybe a little extremist in politics and people don't like that, but who knows, or, you know, AI and blah, 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 whatever. Nonsense. Next. Okay. So they did announce a cheaper Cybertruck, and then 10 days later, it's gone. Like literally the next day after announcing it, Elon announced that it was going to only be there for 10 days. So make it make sense, right? So Cybertruck famously has been a flop. They haven't sold nearly as many as they thought they were going to sell. It was supposed to be like this $39,900 vehicle, came out at $80,000, so they very much missed that mark. And then they announced this month that they were going to do a $59,900, so $20,000 cheaper. Hey, look at, maybe it's more compelling. Maybe they want to move some trucks for once. And then Elon tweeted the next day, no, it's only for the next 10 days, right? So whatever, honestly. It's, yeah. Maybe SpaceX couldn't buy any more. All right, Tesla has also removed autopilot from all its Model 3 and Y trims. Those are the only trims left now, basically. Due to false advertising, although Raymond is it's because they want Musk to be a trillionaire, but the articles that I found, it was all because they lost a court battle with the California DMV, which basically said that autopilot led people to believe that it was more capable than it actually was, which is false advertising, and they had to fix that. And so rather than just rename autopilot something normal, they eliminated it from the cars.
So there's a mistake there somewhere. It's FSD that was at issue?
No, autopilot as well.
Autopilot.
It was in I read, Raymond, read the articles.
The article
They're all linked in the bottom of the slide.
The article must have been wrong. Autopilot is just adaptive cruise control.
Adaptive cruise, yeah.
And lane keep assist.
I
It's
understand.
not all the other
Yeah.
stuff.
Literally every car in the world has that except Tesla's now.
Yes, but exactly. Now you have to have FSD.
But it was
if you want
autopilot
that.
that they specifically cited the term autopilot and full
They were
self-driving
wrong.
as well. But it doesn't matter. It's gone. So if you're buying a new Tesla, don't expect to have auto cruise control or whatever, like a basic Hyundai has. I think now it's like $100 a month or something stupid.
Autopilot,
Yes.
so adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist, that was
Yeah.
standard before.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
this
standard
is-
on just about every car on
Yeah.
the planet now. right?
Yeah. So this is part of Tesla's new mission to make Elon a trillionaire. Yeah, because subscriptions are.
So
In the future, we
fact
own
is-
nothing and pay for everything. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have to have FSD subscription is now you can only subscribe. You cannot pay a $10,000 like what I did, which was pay $10,000 and I have it for as long as I own the car, or that's no longer an option. Now there's only one option, and they used to have like different levels of autopilot and all that. That's all gone as well. Now you have either nothing or you pay $100 a month for FSD, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no free autopilot or free level 2 service available at all.
Yeah. So it
Now,
sucks.
what
And
they're
also
gonna do,
FSD is now not full self-driving because it has to be supervised, which makes it not autonomous because you have to sit there and watch what it does. So whatever. We're going to actually talk about that right now because we're talking about the robotaxi, which uses FSD system. And Tesla reported another 5 new crashes to its small robotaxi fleet in Austin, which still has drivers. That brings it to a total of 14 since they launched 8 months ago, so more than 1 crash a month. The data comes from the latest update to NISTA, or NHTS. There was actually 1 crash in July that they just finally revised to let us know that somebody was actually hospitalized in that crash. So that's not great. Very transparent of you, Tesla. They have, basically, this works out to 1 crash every 57,000 miles, because America. The average American driver experiences 1 crash every 500,000 miles, just to put that into context. So Elon's like 12 times safer than a human thing is complete malarkey. We can swear on YouTube now, right? It's bullshit.
All right.
Now we're demonetized with our
more editing.
Anyway, Tesla's fleet is crashing at approximately 8 times the rate of a human. And to compare like to like, right? So Waymo has been out on the roads doing autonomous taxis with no drivers on board. And they've logged 6.4 million miles in Austin, specifically, with no safety driver. They've only had 51 incidents ever. And that gives them an accident rate of 1 for every 125,000 miles. So still not as good as a human, but way better than Tesla. So
I'm going to push back very hard on this one on one way, and that is that you're not, as a statistician, you should know, you have to make sure, is everybody collecting the same number of stats? The fact is, I personally have been in 10 accidents, only 2 of which have ever actually been reported to the police or my insurance company or anything like that. So, the one in the every 500,000, that is 1 in every 500,000 miles is reported to police or insurance companies. That doesn't include the time that you hit something in a parking lot and got it repaired by yourself and didn't tell anybody about it. So there is a bit of a problem there. That now I do agree that Teslas are in more accidents than humans, but there is a bit of a not fair data set here.
I would suggest, Craig, that as a statistician,
yes,
your anecdotal experience of several crashes in your driving career is not representative of the fleet-wide average for all drivers in the country, as there are many, many drivers that have 0 crashes in their driving history, or 1 or 2. And
the other thing, you selected Austin on purpose for both.
I selected
right?
Austin on purpose because that's the only place Tesla drives.
So Waymo has twice.
Yeah, Waymo has
right?
fleets in all sorts of cities. I just
same-
chose Austin so that we could compare like for like, because they're both operating in the same geo-restricted area. And you can see that Waymo's fleet is huge, despite what Elon promised. Also, speaking of cybercabs and crashing, they've begun production of the cybercab this month. Their first one came off the line recently. It was announced in 2024 at the We Robot event. It's supposed to come without a steering wheel or pedals and depend entirely on FSD, which is still not unsupervised. He claims it'll produce 5 million robotaxis a year, and if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. It's called the Gordie Howe Bridge. The milestone comes with the company not yet having solved any issues with its self-driving software. So cool. But
that was the other thing I was going to push back. In Austin, they no longer have safety drivers. They had them in the beginning, but today, if you go to Austin and get in a Tesla, there is no safety driver.
A lot of journalists have gone to Austin to ride the Cybercab, and they found that there are only 42 vehicles on the road. And of those, most of them still have safety drivers. But yeah. Okay.
Anyways, anybody have any questions? Thank you.
You missed the Donut Lab, I think, announcement that, whether it's going to be the most, whatever, if it's the biggest scam or the biggest change in batteries, I think we should at least acknowledge that there's something going on there.
You're talking about the solid state batteries?
Supposedly solid state battery.
I will report on that when it becomes a thing that's not vaporware. Because we hear this literally every month. There's somebody making bold claims about magic batteries that charge in 10 seconds and can go for thousands of kilometers on a charge and have no volatile things and will never explode and last forever. And like, show me a car with one.
Yeah, when anybody talks about solid state batteries, I tell them, I don't care if the battery is solid state or not. What I care about is how much does it cost, how fast does it charge, how long does it last, how much range
can
I get,
you produce
how
it in
safe
scale?
is it? That's the only thing that matters.
So I don't know if you're aware, but they came out today with the independent, I think it was Finnish sort of independent body.
Yes,
put out a report.
they tested one cell and they tested its charging speeds. So that tells me that a battery cell exists and that it can charge as fast as the batteries for my drone and it doesn't catch fire. So they've accomplished the bare minimum to exist in the world as a battery technology cell. So we'll see. Like, if they start announcing cool stuff that's confirmed and then they can get to scale, then I will talk about it in the news. But for now, it's not news, it's just hype.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to having cars that actually have the batteries, and then, like you say, we could talk about them. Let's try to go through this fairly fast. Like usual, we have the kilowatts and coffee. This is the past events, right? So, and we had this here where BluWave-ai was there at the event that Angela organized back in, when was it, January 29th? Very, very interesting event. We talked about batteries. The guy on the left, Michael Bernard, very interesting guy. I had him speak at something else before, and very interesting guy, knows his stuff quite well. Anyways, talk about him more over beers. This is BluWave-ai. They did a presentation at EVS last month. So if you want to look at the recording, it's very similar to what they talked about today, but it is there. Upcoming stuff. So we're going to meet here next month. We're going to have the kilowatt and coffee like usual rotation. This here, if you're interested, you're more than welcome to attend. It's during the day though. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to be presenting to the students and giving them a challenge. And the challenge will be, we'll talk about certain things that are happening in the auto industry right now. And their challenge is going to be to figure out what the government's policy should be. Okay, so that'll include Chinese EVs and all sorts of stuff like that, right? So this, the audience is Telfer School Management School students, right? So should be quite interesting. Okay, so one of the things that is going to affect our schedule significantly this year is that we just put in a bid with cafes. And we have two other partners there, and I think they're a bit further down. So us, we're a partner, and Climate Network Lanark. So we did something with them last year in, which city was it, Mike? Do you remember? Climate Network Almont?
Almont, yes.
Yeah. So they want to do a few more events out there. So the idea here is that we, actually, let's go through it in order. So there were two streams that we could bid on. The stream we selected is electric vehicle test drives and charging education, okay? So there was another stream which I can't remember what it is, but it really wasn't pertinent. The bids close on February 19th, so just a few days ago. And we're supposed to receive notification within 100 days. So, but apparently they may do it sooner because they want some of the money to be spent very soon. So anyways, we'll see. Hopefully we'll get something soon because that will affect everything else we do this year, okay? So again, partners, us, Climate Network, Lanark, and cafes. So we would have, this would give us staff similar to what we had with EnviroCenter. And they would do some of the admin stuff that it's very hard for us to get volunteers to do that. You know, getting volunteers to talk about EVs is relatively easy, but getting volunteers to book venues and to do stuff like that is very difficult. So, and we're not experts anyways. So, okay, so the focus will be on rural areas of Eastern Ontario. Okay, so one of the criteria was it had to be in underserved areas. So, as you probably know, there's a lot of small towns around Eastern Ontario that have never had events organized. There are some like Almont where they want to do more. So what we would be doing is events that would be probably the furthest we would go is possibly as far as Pembroke, but that's a bit far. It's a bit far. And east is about an hour or so from here, right? So we'd probably go to Alexandria, Cornwall, places like that, okay? What else? So we're going to do workshops as part of that and test drives. Now the test drives, you want to use dealer vehicles, okay? Mostly for insurance purposes. We're looking at some stuff there and we'll see how that works out, but insurance is a significant issue for test drives, right? And so it's not always easy. Also, the problem with leveraging dealers is that dealers have territories. So you have to talk to the dealer whose territory it is that the event is happening at. And that makes it difficult. You have to deal with a lot of different dealers and they're not always cooperative and right. But we'll see how that goes. So the list of events we have up to now looks like this, okay? And it may change again because of the that bid. I've got a presentation happening during the day at the Heron Community Center. So that's something I'm doing to a bunch of, I think it's old middle-aged white guys that, that meet during the day, but they're mostly retired. Anyways, talking about just EV 101 type stuff, right? Pretty simple. Then I already mentioned the March 17th thing at Ottawa. The Gatineau Auto Show is happening. I haven't had any details about what things will look like. Contacted l'EVCO today, and they haven't heard much either. So we're expecting that they will be doing like last year and doing test drives. I'm not sure we want to have a booth there like we did last year or the years before, but certainly people will be encouraged to go and do test drives with l'EVCO. Last year was interesting because they had a whole whack of different models you could try, including, I think they had 2 ID buses, right? They had 1? Okay, and they had a bunch of other cars too, so it was really interesting. You could actually yourself, as a volunteer, go and try some, okay? And a lot of people took advantage of that. Yes? Yes, same location last year, yeah. As far as I know anyways, supposed to be. Okay, then Kempville, that's the event we do every year, and yet again this year, I will be out of the country for that event. So Mike is going to take over that event, right?
Yep.
So anyways, that's being organized. That's going to happen regardless, right? Mike is also talking to engineers on April 29th. There's the engineers of Eastern Ontario, whatever, the group that Henry should be part of, but is not part of. The Professional Engineers of Ontario, Ottawa chapter. They're doing an event where there's going to be 3 speakers. Mike will be one of them. Talking about things that have to do with energy in one or another. Make sure it's we did talk about this.
It's in my calendar. We're good.
So anyways, then there's a Westport Eco Fest. Not sure what we're going to do there. Blackburn Fun Fair. June, this is a bit of an issue here because the cafes, before that bid, cafes took over SmartNet Coalition. And the event we used to do at Lansdowne Park is now going to be done by cafes. And they're targeting June 6th. Why June 6th?
It's D-Day.
It's what?
D-Day.
It is D-Day. You're right. But that's not the reason they're targeting June 6th. The reason they're targeting June 6th is it's Doors Open Ottawa. And the Museum of Science and Technology will be doing something. So the thing is, if we do it on June 6th, we're probably going to have 1,000 people walk through. If we do it another weekend, the problem with the museum is if it's a nice sunny day, nobody shows. If it's a rainy, terrible weather day, it's packed with people. But then we would be outside anyways. Anyways, so it wouldn't quite match, right? So we're aiming for June 6th. We're still going to talk about what we could do with Blackburn to power the fair, right? So that's a bit of a challenge, given that the F-150 Lightning is no longer a thing. But anyways, so I won't talk too much about all the other things, but you see there's a number of different things on the agenda, okay? Any questions?
Are these on our website?
No, they're not. They will be, though, in the deck. When I put the deck up today or tomorrow on our website, they will be there, okay? So you could all have access to them. Any other questions? So if you're not a member, you could become a member, right? And subscribers, actually, we're at 127. I checked earlier. What's that?
Yeah, we should
For
probably update the
2024.
website
I
or the
guess
slide.
I should change that. So, but this is also no screen. It's 127 subscribers we have now.
Hey, look at that.
So we need more.
And they all heard me swear.
Okay, and I think that was the last. Okay, so now we're at the round table. It is 9:15, so we kind of have to.
We're tight for time. So if you're watching us online, you can stick around and join us on the round table briefly. If you're watching us on YouTube, this is where your video ends. So thanks for coming out and watching us, and we'll see you next month.